You know how the Bible would always tell us the ancestry of a person before telling the person's story. So, for example, and there was a man named Job, the son of XYZ, the son of Lagbaja from the town of, and goes on and on and on. And the man was called Abraham, the son of this, the son of that, and these are the generations of Isaac, blah blah blah, and it goes on here. So the Bible would always tell us about the ancestry of a person before telling the person's story. And you know how many times we will just keep through because we want to get to the good parts. We're getting bored with all of that information. But I've come to understand that multiple times these things reoccur, and then there are even books of the Bible that are dedicated to just telling you about the lineage of a person, of a man. And here's what I've come to understand with the help of God: that beyond providing important records of historical succession, beyond continuity, beyond legitimacy, these lineages, or should we call it genealogies, provide a very beautiful insight to God's plan for humanity. Now we can see that in the lineage of Jesus, we do not find a perfect person. There was no perfect person in the lineage of Jesus. They all had one shortcomings or the other. There was Rahab, there was Ruth, there was David, there was King Uzziah, there was Manasseh. Matter of fact, King Uzziah did a lot of evil, and to name but a few. And these were people in the lineage of Jesus, and we see how, despite their imperfections, God had a way of preserving those people and divinely orchestrating their lives and their generations after them in a way that it made impact in their society, whether it was a negative impact or a positive impact. But these people left a legacy, good or bad, that they would always remember for. Like, their names were mentioned in history, okay, and they were prominent people in their time. And the records of fathers and kinsmen usually allows the next generation to see how God works through their family ancestry. So you and I have a lineage, and the records of, oh, my mother was this from this town, and this happened, and her mother was that, and her father was that, and so on and so forth. In Nigeria, in my side of the world, Nigeria, they'll always, whatever happens, they'll always say it's from your father's house, it's from your father's house. Not because your dad particularly is a bad person, or the people your father's line are evil people, but because every person has a lineage, and you are continuing your father's lineage. So even if it was Sarah the Bible was talking about, it would say Sarah, the daughter of this man of, okay, let me use Rachel. Rachel, the daughter of Laban, the brother of this and that and that. It keeps on going like that. So it's the lineage, the father's house, the fathers and the kinsmen. So, but it shows how intentional God is in creation. So with every generation, there was a story that still points us to God's plan for mankind. It was in every generation. It doesn't matter how the story was told, but there was something. You could just tell that there was a preservation grace upon every generation, and it was still pointing to God's plan to reconcile with man since the fall of Adam. And in our today's world, we must not be quick to do away with family genealogies. As much as, oh, everybody's being woke now, and everybody, I don't know, the idea of the whole family thing is getting swept under the bridges. But we must always remember that they serve as a reference to God's promises and God's prophecies that have been spoken concerning each family. So in the Bible, we see the priest Eli. Eli was from an ancestry of priests. They had the office of priesthood in their lineage. So from Aaron was a priest, his descendant was a priest, and it kept going on and on and on, like until it got to Elliston. And when he got to Elliston, he had his sons, Hophni and Phinehas, and those ones were just irresponsible. And you know what God said? He said, now I know I promised that the office of priesthood was going to be in your lineage, but now I am going to be removing it. I'm going to be wiping everyone in your lineage, and no one will get to old age. They will all die. Every increase in your house will die at flower age, and and even if the only person who would even be around will be blind and frustrated and all of that. We can see that in First Samuel, I think chapter 2. But what this is actually trying to say is that that lineage, Eli was from a lineage of priests, and his sons were supposed to continue in the priesthood, but they were irresponsible, so he had to end with them. And so it is very important as humans that at every step of the way we turn back and look back at history, look back at our lineage, and say, where am I coming from? What is the grace upon my lineage? What is the grace? What is the mantle in my family? I've seen people that say, oh, I'm from a family of prophetesses. Like my grandma was a prophetess, my grandma was a prophetess, my mom was a prophetess, her mother, that's my great grandmother was, and things like that. And you find out that even those ones, they have the gift of prophecy. And sometimes the good thing is that even when you don't have the gifts, you can contend for it because it's in your lineage. It's a promise. It's a covenant that God has with you people. And when you understand what is said concerning your lineage, right, whether it is good or bad, it gives you an advantage to either stand in the gap and say, this evil has to stop. That's if it's a bad one. This evil has to stop. This curse has to end. It has to end with me, right? It ends now. It ends with my generation. It cannot continue. Or if it's a good one, you can find a way to return to the Lord. Let's say that let's say that your family probably were walking in the way of the Lord, and then at some point, maybe your great grandfather now turned away from the Lord and then started practicing other things or doing other things or start living in a life that does not please God. But then when you know your lineage, you know that, oh, the fathers before this, my great grandfather, were servants of God. They loved the Lord. They walked in the way of the Lord. They obeyed the Lord. They feared the Lord. So how come? And then you start to trace, okay, it was from my great grandfather, things started to turn around. Okay, so now it starts with me. We would return to the Lord. And if it's an advantage, like I already mentioned before, to say that, oh, the patriarchs and the matriarchs in my lineage have enjoyed this kind of grace. There was the grace for abundant supply. You know how we used to say generational wealth, old money, and all of that. Yes, if you understand the promises and the covenants at work in your lineage, it helps you to take advantage of it. And you tell yourself, even if it does not look like my reality right now, I will not be exempted from this grace, from this promise, from this prophecy, from this covenant. So these things are actually very important. You can't live your life to chance. My dad taught me that before you decide to settle in a place, because I left home very early as a young girl, and I started to live on my own quite early. So every time I had to move places, I would tell my parents that, oh, okay, I moved from this place to this place. And one of the things he taught me was that before you settle in a place, you must find out the name and meaning of this place. So I live in Lagos State, Nigeria here, and for some places like that, they have very funny names, though it's in the language of the land. But they are very funny names, and so sometimes you just assume that it's just a name. But until my dad helps me to understand that, okay, so you need to know the meaning of the name of this community. Oh, they are calling themselves what here, Ilobo. What is Ilobo? And stuff like that. So you need to understand before you settle it. Jacob laid his head to rest on an altar without even realizing that altar was an altar where his fathers had made sacrifices to the Lord. And so it was an altar unto the Lord. For Jacob, it was just a stone and he needed to just rest his head, and then he encountered the angels there. So it's always very important to not be in oblivion of those things. And it's not just about places and properties. It could be people. It could be a workplace, the place you're going to go and apply for a job, the place you got employed in. You want to find out what's the history here. Why are people leaving? Or the person, there was a time in my life where when I'm applying for a job, I'm asking you a question. Please, the person that was in this position, why did the person leave? Yeah, I need to know why the person is leaving. You're moving into a house. The person that lived here, what kind of job did the person do? How did the person live and all of that? You might want to say, oh, it doesn't matter, all those things. No, but this life is 100% spiritual, and a lot of these things are very, very important. History, the Bible says, is in Proverbs 22, verse 28, do not remove the ancient landmark which thy fathers have set in for you. Yeah, some traditions, some cultures, some landmarks might not be good, might not be beneficial, but it's always important that you know these things. It's always very, very, very important that you know these things. Very, very important. It's not only when you want to go and marry a wife, then I'll tell you, oh, go and find out about her family. These little things matters. May the Lord help us.